Welcome to Millionaire Landscape, the podcast with game-changing digital marketing strategies for hardscape, landscape, irrigation, and lawn care industries. Hosted by Keith Eneix, this podcast takes you behind the scenes to explore the real numbers, proven strategies, and challenges of scaling $1 million hardscape business from dirt to millions. Ready to dig into success? Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Millionaire Landscaper podcast. And this is the place where we help you turn dirt into dollars. So I'm Keith Eneix, and I'm here with my brother Neil. He runs our multi-million-dollar hardscape company.
In our last companies, guys, we were talking about the exact numbers and systems that got us to $2.5 million a year. And today we're going to flip that. And we're going to be looking at the mistakes that we typically see that end up leaving guys stuck, where they're either burning out at 500,000 or hitting plateaus, where they're struggling. Okay, you got a lot coming in, but where's the margin? And there's no systems, and really at the end of the day, there's no real freedom. You know, you're essentially, it's like you're working a job that's 80 to 120 hours a week, and that's not fun.
No, yeah. If you've ever felt like that, like felt like, hey, I'm working harder, but I'm not getting ahead, or like your business is running you instead of the other way around, well, then this episode's for you. So let's break it down. Let's start off with the first thing that we see. The first thing that is a myth that we want to address is that more jobs will fix it. So we thought just selling jobs would more of solve all of our money problems, but without margin or tracking the production pace, more jobs can just mean more chaos. Neil, what do you think about that? Have you ever experienced more chaos when just trying to do more jobs?
Yeah. You know, guys, it's not fun to work a lot and not make money from it. We're in there to provide a good service. We're there to provide. And so if we're not making money, that is it's hard to go out and want to do what needs to be done if you're not making money with it. So tracking margin, tracking your production pace, thinking that, oh, if I just add more jobs to this, no, you gotta stop and you gotta look at your margins. You gotta get that fixed correctly. Um, there can some scaling can help provide opportunities for margin, but really as you scale, you typically you're taking on more complexity, and so if you've got organization and system problems and margin problems from the beginning, having more of it doesn't give you more money, it just gives you more problems. If you've got more jobs, it turns into just a bigger problem. So you got to learn how to calculate production capacity. You got to learn how to calculate your profit per job, you know, not just your book sales. We've seen it before. I mean, how many times have we taken a look in the news and we're saying, oh, okay, here's, or you may know a local company or something. You're seeing their equipment sell off. Well, how did that happen? Well, I thought they were doing good as far as the money that they made. Well, they weren't. They didn't have the profit margins to be able to continue, and they had operational inefficiencies, and they went broke.
Yeah.
So
Over leveraged. Not good.
There's a reason why, you know, the majority of businesses that start die in the first 5 years. So these are the things to look at and fix. And that's one of the things where, if as doers, right, you like doing, you like the service, you like the skill, like feeling like you're moving mountains or rocks or blocks. But you got to pause, and we got to look at these things, because just doing more of that same work won't fix it.
Yeah, it's like 50% of businesses fail in the first 5 years.
Yeah.
That's staggering.
Yeah.
Right. So something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. I was looking at this quote by a guy. He was saying, hey, when you're building your business, when you're growing your business, a lot of guys think that leadership is you getting ahead of everybody in your business and doing all the work and leading in the work. And I think there's some pride in that, right? There's some like, hey, I'm a good leader because I'm leading in all these different areas. And so I'm going to lead in the growth effort. But the problem is when you create chaos because you don't stop. I mean, is there a difference between going out and leading the effort, figuring out what the standard operating procedure should be, and then I guess replacing behind you versus leading in the effort, say, becoming the machine operator, driving the truck, doing all the things in the business, but then you just stay in those things. And you want more work, but then you just end up creating more chaos. I don't know. What do you think of that picture?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in evaluating leadership. There's different, everything in its place and its time, right? There's a time where leadership may need to go be the example
Yeah.
of how to do something. That may need to be ongoing for a period of time. But that is not the entirety of leadership in its nutshell. Leadership is learning how to hand things off, growing someone to a place where that can be handed off so that you can take that hat off, pass it to that next person and say, hey, you got this. And your systems, you still, there's still accountability, there's still those types of things, but your systems and your relationship and the leadership changes. And now that person is doing that activity. And
Yeah.
your leadership is one of accountability and one of tuning, one of strategy and those types of things. And so I think that was a leadership mantra that, because I remember that type of attitude about leadership, especially in my younger years. And so I think out of the um 60s, 70s, 80s, especially, that type of idea is that the leaders go out and they stay ahead of everybody as far as doing everything. And obviously that's not anywhere, but it just because it's an old idea or an old concept doesn't mean it's the best concept or the right version of it. And so I think in something like this, it's right time, right place, right person. And so that is not the whole of leadership. There's time and a place for that, but leadership is helping people scale to where they can become leaders themselves. And so that's one of the big problems with that concept is if you're out in front of everybody all the time, they don't have an opportunity to become leaders and teachers themselves. And that's typically what I'll see. What you end up with is megamind. You've got one person who's the nervous system and the brains of the entire thing, and then everybody else, goes to the brain as is constantly, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
You're not reproducing yourself. And that ends up becoming really limiting. because you don't have guys who feel empowered to make decisions. They feel like everything has to come back to you as the leader, and their own leadership is stunted. And really, your organization is stunted because of that. So it's super important to self-reflect. Um, and I would say there's fear and there's ego that can get in the way here. And which one it is for us, we just have to self-reflect on, right? Fear can be, well, the job's not going to get done right. Well, okay, let's look at our processes and our training and our empowerment. Ego is, nobody can do the job as good as me. Okay, well, let's look at our processes and our training and our empowerment.
Yeah.
Same issue. That's the same. You have to go the same tools for handling both of those issues are right there, and we just have to embrace it. It's not about us.
Yeah, there's a picture of letting go of your business. It's like imagine you're kind of like climbing down this cliff, and it's scary, and you look down, and you're like hanging on for dear life, but then you kind of come out of that picture a little bit, and you recognize that the person hanging on the cliff just is literally like a foot off the ground, but they're hanging on to this plant for dear life. And I think we do that in our business, and we just have to hold on for dear life, have that control. I thought somebody explained that visual to me, and it really hit home for me. Maybe that happens in a couple of ways. Maybe that's trying to get control of, hey, I need new equipment, I need things to look a certain way, but then you end up over leveraging yourself into debt, and you spend on the wrong things, and then let's just say the economy ups and downs come. When it goes down, your business isn't really set. It's not in a good place on the marketing side to really have the lead volume you need. From another standpoint, you can choke your company by not investing enough into your equipment, and then you just have broken down trucks all the time and machinery, you broken down systems and all that kind of stuff. Either way, you're holding on. You're holding on. If you just let go, you'll actually hit solid ground, and you just got to believe the process and kind of let go. You can scale revenue and still go broke. That's the crazy thing. I was talking to a business owner yesterday. He scaled his revenue to $4 million, been doing that for the last 5 years. And he's like, Keith, I've made no money. How do you do that? That's right. How do you do that? You can scale revenue and still go broke. Okay, well, let's move on to the second one, underpricing the work. So, like, if we were to think about a situation where maybe we've lost money on a job, we shared a little bit about a story on that last time, because maybe we missed out on scope creep as an example. That should have been caught in the quote stage. Quoting is such a big topic in our niche. Everybody's talking about, how do I price that job correctly for profitability? Hear it all the time. Like, tell me a little bit, how do you come at that again? You kind of touched on that a little bit last time, but how do you come at the quoting process to make sure that you're getting that profit? And maybe just one other thing, why is profit important now? Can you answer that question for us?
I mean, your profit is really what runs the company. It is not just the income that comes in. At the end of the day, profit is what makes it so that you can go on. It is, we can think, oh, okay, my revenue is what keeps the company going. It's not. It's profit. you're going to have ups and downs in your company, and you need that profit margin to be successful and to run the next month. That's how important it is. It's not the revenue that's the key. It is the profit. The way that I approach this is, obviously you have your, you um working on protecting your costs on materials, on labor, on things like that, in um constantly trying to refine. I try to go through a regular cycle of refining, um where I go through a loop. Okay, what can I do to refine this area? What can I do to, and when I say refine, I mean, make more efficient so we save more money, or lower costs so we save more money, or things like that. How do we close more? How do we 1% cuts, or 1% improvements over time uh becomes massive over time. And so I that's one of the things, that one of the processes that I just keep looping through for our company. And um maybe an example of that, here's a practical example. So we run, for installation, we run tracos. We've got power wheelbarrows, also known as concrete buggies and things like that. Well, we have trailers and we have trucks. If we are using the trucks, we are oftentimes putting material on the ground, right? Well, if you're having to run you either pull the traco that you've got that you're using to run your installation or your skid steer or whatever, and you have to pull it back to go move material to get it into the location that you want. Well, coal chutes. I don't know if you're familiar with those. Coal chutes can be installed in the bed of the truck rather than having to pull a traco off of its point of, or a skid steer off of its point of being able to produce, get in your square footage. And now your wheelbarrows can just go directly underneath the truck. And this only works for small aggregate, it doesn't work for larger stuff. But now you're just raising the bed of the truck, opening that coal chute, and you're filling your wheelbarrows, locking them back up, and you're hauling stuff back. You don't have to set up two tracos in order to just move your material from your uh, uh, from where you're staging your trucks and material to get it back to where the work is going on. And so now um, you're saving yourself a traco that can be used on another job, or a piece of equipment that can be used on another job. You're
Yeah.
saving time because you're not dumping it on the ground and then filling it up again, having to do the same work again. You're saving a step, and on top of that, your main piece of equipment that's being used to get that square footage put in is able to continue running. And so things like that. Additionally, on a job, I like to give ranges in my estimates. Sometimes you don't know what's exactly going to be under the ground. And so if you can have that kind of conversation when you say, "Oh, hey, homeowner, I'm sorry. I know I put 1 day of demolition in here, but we found something that's going to give us an extra half day." Well, and they say, "Well, you told me 1 day. I signed off on 1 day. I want you to get it done in 1 day." Well, that's not fun.
No.
how are you going to feel
See a
going back
profit.
to the rest of the job and think, if only I could have
Yeah.
had that. And obviously not all customers are like this, but there are one or two a year, right?
Oh yeah.
I think
Oh yeah.
we've all experienced that where we have one or two customers where they're hard and fast, and so the good ones that where they're nice to work for, they they understand that there's variables. Well, how about if we just protect our company and build in some expectations that there could be variables from the beginning and provide some ranges, like okay, everything goes according to how we're anticipating. This is the amount of time that we're anticipating in here, but it could be this much, if we end up finding, hard pan in there, or if we come across some unknowns on um utilities that weren't found or someone didn't know about or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so those are just different ways that you can protect margin. I even do this on our materials. So um if you've got soft soil, that can eat up crushed rock faster than hard. And so you may be thinking, you're
Where'd
providing a
all the
quote
material go?
for
Yeah, we've
7
seen that.
yards of crushed rock,
Yeah.
and that soil is soft and it's eating it up, and actually you're thinking, well, in order to, get this many inches of compacted compacted gravel at the right grade, I need 9 yards. Well, run that in a range in your
Yeah.
estimates. And if customers have a question, you can let them know. Hey, well,
Yeah.
it sometimes there's variabilities, and so we quote, we give a range. This is best case, and this is, we may need a little bit more. But then that way, the customer signs off and acknowledges those ranges right at the beginning,
Yeah.
and they're set up to understand, hey, there could be some variation here. If there is, we're going to talk about it, so um, we're not, there's nothing hid. But it helps protect margin for those one or two times a year when you may have a customer who um, wants to, no, you told me this, and that's what I signed off on. Another thing is handshake agreements. That is a surefire way to make sure that your company loses money on jobs. That is, if you want to lose money on a job, that's a very
Yeah.
efficient way of doing it. Um, you've got to have sign off, and it's
Mm.
not because people don't mean well. You can have a discussion with a customer and believe that they are hearing that there is a mutual understanding
Right.
of a price cost increase of that comes from a change in scope that they may not realize they're asking for. Making sure that they are signing off, and you may say, well, boy, that takes too much time. An email counts.
Yeah.
Hey, just wanted to verify you're okay with this increase. Yes. That
Text.
is, or text. Those count legally. So even doing that, you don't have to sit there with an iPod or iPad and, here, please sign this.
Contract change. Big
Um,
old contract.
yeah, or a big old, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a big old contract change, but
Yeah.
people forget as well.
100%. Yeah.
And so you don't want, you want to minimize those types of problems with people in a situation where they're generally well-meaning. Most of our customers are, they're well-meaning. And so I would say, as a leader in your company, it's not fair to your customers to set up a situation where that can occur and you end up having an unnecessary bad or unhappy point of experience in your service with them. That was really, it was unnecessary. And so making sure making sure that there's a sign off on scope change um, and things like that, so that you're protecting your margin. People will forget. You know, we've seen it over the years. Just, you know, oh really? You know, and my foreman will say, well, I talked with them about it. I let them know. I let them know that it was going to cost more. And we talked about this change, and they just don't remember it. Life gets
Yeah.
busy. It's not people becoming and being intentionally malicious. Generally, people mean well, but life gets busy. And
Yeah.
if we reflect on our own lives and the busyness, there's things that we may forget. And so sometimes it just takes a little bit more pointed, a point of discussion in a scope change to make sure that that's remembered. And so signing off via email or text is a good way to just help cement that, or just having the contract out in front of you where you can modify it on the fly. So
Some good thoughts, Neil. Maybe one thing I'll camp on just for a sec is the idea of honest work. I think there's going to be a tie to this idea that honest work is work that maybe you even do for free. I don't know. When I was first starting off in business, I guess kind of a younger attitude, but this idea that profit, you know, charging extra and making a profit might not be honest, but that's not reality at all. I mean, as you mature as a business, you should be shooting to make minimum 20% profits in your business. If you're not, something's broken in your business. As high as 30, 35, even 40% profits in your business. You can do that. Absolutely. That is not dishonest at all. And I think the key is, you know, for some of you guys out there, somebody never told me this, so I'm going to tell you right now, it's okay for you to go make profits. It's fine. A healthy business makes minimum 20 to 30% in profit in your business. And if you're not making profits in your business, why are you in business? Just go get a job. You're working 80 hours a week for nothing. Don't do that. Go work a 40-hour a week job, you know, for a regular job pay. So, and some of you, it might even be worse. Maybe it's you do some jobs and you consistently don't make money. Well, you're going to be out of business, you know, really quick. That's not going to work. But you need 20% profits. That's going to help you keep a reserve of at least 3 to 6 months in the bank account, right? We need that for slow season. And we also need that for the equipment that we need to update, right? And also for any sort of surprises that come along. There's going to be surprises that happen. So we need 3 to 6 months in the bank. So the thing is, you're not too expensive. You're just not explaining the value right. And there were some great things you mentioned, Neil, as far as how to communicate with the customer and our clients to be able to help them understand that value and stay aligned to proper pricing and making profits. So,
and Keith, I think what you just said is such a great point, and guys and gals, an important thing that for us to remember, there's always going to be someone cheaper, because there's always going to be people who are willing to cut corners on the quality of their work. You people will always be able to find someone uh who gives a lower quote. Your business will die if you try to live off of being the cheapest, because the bottom of the estimates are, there'll be people who are willing to not do the work right so that they can bring that money in. And there is a point where that work cannot be done for a certain price unless someone is cutting doing something right the right way. So the problem isn't your cost. You've got to flip that and understand you've got to be confident in your product, confident in your service, and understand that someone's always going to be cheaper because some people are going to be willing to cut doing the job right. And so you've got to be able to frame your messaging of what your company does in that way so that people understand that you're explaining the value of doing the job right.
Hmm.
You've probably come across this. I know that we have. We do several jobs every year where we are fixing another company's low cost bid work. Right now we're working on putting a bid together and working with a geotech on a 12-foot wall where the company didn't um uh this sorry, well, they did this one wrong. It was an 8-foot wall. um they used
Wow.
they used wash rock for the fill behind the entire wall. um they didn't fill in the blocks. They didn't put in the leveling course that was needed on the block wall. They didn't to the thickness or compact it the way that it was needed. They were cheap. Um, and we're going to run into this. And so we need to be able to be confident in our value on doing the right job. And that'll come through. It comes through. And it comes through when
Yeah.
you or your salespeople believe in the product. If you
Yeah.
if you truly believe in the product, that it's good work, that comes through to people. They're
Hmm.
looking to try to sniff out the person that installs wash rock behind their block walls. They're trying to sniff out the person who's building them a gravel parking pad where they're wanting to park their RV, and they're only running, 3 inches of gravel of 5/8 minus or something behind there instead of 8 inches that's needed. Um, this so all that to say, it's a losing battle to try to be the cheapest, because ultimately doing the job right is going to cost a certain amount. There's definitely a limit there. So what we need to do is we need to become confident in explaining our value and the value of doing the job right.
That's
So,
so important. I
mhm.
think I think it's like this is a blanket statement, but I tend to find this to be true. Maybe you disagree, but I tend to find that cheap companies are dishonest. There's dishonesty in their company. Their employees are dishonest. The owners are dishonest. Their work that they do is dishonest. I actually tend to find that companies that are profitable tend to be more honest because they have the money to support honesty. They actually have the profits to reinvest into the honest systems that you need to have a really good, strong business.
Yes.
So, not to say that that's blanket across, either end, right? There's definitely companies that way overcharge as well, but you need to shoot for honesty and make a good profit. That's why you're in business. All right, well,
Mhm.
let's go on to the third one. No time blocked for sales. most owners are doing sales in between jobs, which means often sales just never gets done. What do you think about that, Neil?
Yeah, you need to have a daily sales rhythm, and this also goes back to your systems. If we're not training our guys, we're in hand taking off those hats and letting other people wear them, then we're going to be on a hamster wheel. And so you need to, as leaders, we need to protect our time for the things that matter. Sales is one of those things that matter. And so if you want to grow, you're going to need to make sure that you're running those systems on operations so that if you're a smaller company and it's you handling all the sales, you're making sure that you have that rhythm to be successful and to grow, and to eventually hire on an estimator where you're handing another hat off to him that allows you to focus on other things. So you need to block your sales time. You need to have software systems in place that allows you to handle your sales process as well and handle communication well. So,
Yeah. So, is there, think about like a block of time? What about a CRM? I mean, for those of you who
yep.
don't know, maybe what CRM, it's the client relationship management tool in your business. Uh, what do you think about that as far as?
Yeah, for sure. A CRM is absolutely key.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different price points. As a smaller company, you don't need a nice, robust client management software. You don't need, HubSpot or something like that if you're just starting out. Um, there are plenty of smaller resources that don't cost a whole lot, but give you good ability to get to manage this rhythm for your sales. And so blocking off time each day, a 4 hour block or something like that, and making sure um, that you're organizing and using your CRM is definitely key.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it's kind of hard to know how much you're losing as far as leads that came in that turned into estimates. You have those leads to estimates and then estimates to close. If you just use those two things and the metrics that you should be hitting for each of those, ideally your leads are turning into opportunities for estimates about 50% of the time or more. That's ideal. And then your close is going to be somewhere around from estimate about 24-25% on minimum. But I tend to see there's no way to scale your business if you're not tracking those. So if you're blocking time aside for sales, and if you're just trying to go off of your gut for what you think your sales rate is or what you think your lead to estimate rate is, you're going to run into some big blockers on scaling your company because you might think that even off of referrals, you have a super high lead to estimate rate, but maybe it's not as high as it should be. Maybe that should be like 90%, but unless you're tracking it in some sort of system, how would you know? You just kind of have to go off of gut. And then your close rates too. Same exact thing. What I find is, the old saying is what gets measured gets done. That applies to us as owners too. So as soon as you start measuring those things in a CRM, like we use pipes in our CRM pipeline tool, and we just, lead comes in and then lead comes to estimate and then lead goes to close. We track each one of those, and every single week we're tracking that metric. I think it's the biggest opportunity for every single business owner to track those metrics and to just move them up a little bit. Like a lot of you might be at 30% on one channel of leads. If you could just move that up to 50%, you're going to make a big impact on your business. So making sure that you have that consistent time. I think as well, Neil, you run a weekly meeting, right? We
I
run a
do.
weekly meeting
Yep.
with our sales team. Yeah.
I run a weekly sales and production meeting, and so we're running over those kinds of numbers, performance numbers, and things like that. Also, something to note as well, when Keith was talking about those numbers, 50% of opportunities, depending on where you are in your business, that may sound way off. Like, if
Mhm.
you've got a bunch of referrals, you may be thinking, whoa, I'm way higher than that. Um, what does that mean? Well, it,
Yeah.
it means that most of your business is from referrals. When you're pushing into sales, into marketing systems to drive leads, and this is important to note, you're going to see those numbers change. So when we talk about 50% of leads turning or more turning into opportunities to estimate, um, that's when you are actively pushing on different marketing channels.
Definitely.
You're running Facebook ads, you're running Google ads, you're running Google Local. You're tied into other referral platforms, um, and things like that. So when you do that, um, it's going to change. You're going to grow, but it also changes um, the how qualified people are when they're coming across your
Yeah.
business and things like that, because you're just casting a bigger net. So that being said, as you are growing, if you're a smaller company that's lived off of referrals, that is a natural flow that you should expect. Those are growing pains as you are growing and developing the marketing system for your company. For those who already have marketing systems running in your company, you may be looking at numbers and thinking, well, is this good or is this bad? Um, Coming from the marketing side of me and Keith, and our experience there with our marketing agency, um, those are pretty normal. Now, can they be improved? Yeah, we're always seeking to improve those things. But that can at least be some guideline where if you're looking at it and you're thinking, okay, all right, this isn't out of the ordinary. I shouldn't be expecting 99% uh, lead to estimate ratio. Um, and this can change, industry to industry, depending exactly what you're focusing on. And so you may have know some other business owners where, hey, oh, I'm in the HVAC industry, and my lead to estimate is this much, and things like that. So there's some variability in there, but
I
are
was
you
trying. I was
hearing?
trying to think of like an illustration. I like basketball, so it's always a good illustration. It's kind of like if all you get is referrals in your business. I hear a lot of business owners say, "Oh man, I just run off of referrals. That's it." Well, that's great. I mean, that's like taking the basketball hoop, bringing it down to the very like minimal point. Those kid basketball hoops, and then you shooting layups on that all day. Like we'd expect you to make that, you know.
Right.
But when we play the real game of scaling the business, you need a team that can shoot from a three, from a layup. You're going to raise that basketball hoop and stuff. And what's going to happen is your team will more consistently be able to be more competitive against the pro companies in your area when you do better
Mhm.
marketing and stuff. But your shooting threes is not going to be the same exact percentage of makes as when you're shooting layups, right? So there's going to be a difference there. So anyway, that was the
Yeah.
illustration that came into my mind.
Yep.
Whether or not that applies, uh,
That's a good
that
illustration.
yeah, something like that. So anyway, often we're not stuck in our business because of a bad market. That's something that we can think of. Oh, maybe the market's bad. I hear that a lot. It's not a bad market. Maybe a bad market affects your lead to estimate rate by 10%, let's just say that drops that from 50% down to 40%, or maybe even 30%. The thing is, if you're tracking that, now you can maybe do something to improve your business, improve your standard operating procedures to bring that up to 40%, even in a bad market. And then when the market gets good again, maybe you'll be at 55, 60% on that lead to close. So that's opportunity. And when you track it and you don't use the excuse of bad market, now you can do something about it and actually improve your business. So I actually like down markets because it kind of gets rid of fluff in the business, and it makes you improve. And then you're that much better on the up market.
Forces you to sharpen up a bit, and it may be, example of that would be understanding that, when the market is soft, during our winter season, the thing to do is offer some kind of a compelling, offer, however much money off, things like that. So, business will close, and developing these marketing systems can help protect your ability to keep the machine running and keep families fed, keep people working. So it's
That's
important. Good. It's important to get off of just the referral network and move just for the way that helps solidify your business in terms of being able to consistently bring in revenue and push on that gas pedal and pull off when you need, and things like that.
Yeah. When I talk to the, $10 million a year companies, none of them are saying, oh, I've got great referrals. I mean, that's a part of their business. Actually, usually what I hear from them is, I love my Facebook ads guy, or I love my Google ads guy. They found a killer guy who understands ads and scale. And I mean, that's the exact type of control we felt in our business as well. All right. I think we should move on talking about the scaling, the next problem, which is trying to scale without a team structure. So that's kind of that picture we were talking about where the owner is the center of everything. Mm-hmm. And there's really not a team structure. It's kind of like the owner pointing and, telling everybody where to go.
That's an incredible play. That's an incredible defensive play. If you want to save money and not spend hardly anything.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a way to do it, but you can't scale.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like that, there's a control aspect there for defense, where if you're not trying to do a ton of revenue, if you're not trying to duplicate yourself, you kind of need to pigeonhole yourself into that spot, which is why guys do that, like that's okay. From a defensive standpoint, but to get out of that, if you want to get out of it, if you just want a small business the rest of your career, that's fine. And if you're playing really good defense, I mean, maybe you're pulling some serious profits and then you're reinvesting those profits into something else like real estate or, whatever. And your intent is to, eventually just kind of maybe it's to pass the business on to one of your family members or something like that. But you intend to live off of, say, real estate investments or something. I mean, that's not a bad play either. Right.
Right.
But but if your goal is to scale the team, you can't do that without clear roles, and the owner can't step on the toes of everybody else's roles. They got to have clear standard operating procedures. There's got to be leadership. There's got to be accountability of the people, which includes also the owner. You can't have an owner that's not accountable to the system. Everybody knows what that kind of system looks like, and then nobody takes anything serious in the company, right? So has to have roles, standard operating procedures, leadership, accountability, honesty. I think of the 3 core values, that's part of creating this whole structure, core values. 3 that really stick out to me are the values of leadership, honesty, expertise. Everybody's got to be a leader in the craft that they do. They got to be honest, and that's intentional honesty, but also looking for unintentional dishonesty in your life too, and rooting that out.
Mm-hmm.
And then that helps you become more of an expert, a better crafter of what you do. Leadership, honesty, and expertise. Those are three big core values. What do you think, Neil, as far as developing this within your business, developing those core values and scaling a team?
Yeah, I think that's really the my opinion, that's the better direction. The reason is because the Megamind structure isn't fun. You can make good money. You can make great money. You can be profitable. You can have a fantastic defensive game. But what a person lacks in that structure is freedom. Because the business won't run unless you're in it. And I don't mean even generally for, a week. I mean, I've seen businesses that are set up like this where they struggle with running for a day or two. And so when the owner wants to take time off, they're taking Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday in order to get a 4-day vacation because their business can't run without them, and not running for 2 days is a lot easier to handle than not running for 4. So they can't do a Monday through Friday plus weekend off. Because of this type of structure. And so if you want to build something that is going to be able to function without you, you have to have these processes, you have to have crew roles, you have to have leadership accountability for yourself and your crews. And they need to be empowered to do this work, because I believe that that's what's better for people anyway. I don't think people thrive very well in a Megamind situation. I think people naturally want to grow and flourish in their leadership. Some people will only feel comfortable going to a certain level, but for the good of your own family and your ability to step in and out of the company and take vacations, or if medical stuff comes up and you have to step away, mitigating those types of risks, I believe that this model is the healthier model for everyone involved, for yourself and your family and for your crews, and for mitigating problems. You think about it, something happens to you medically, your crew wants to keep working, your crew wants to keep providing for their families. How is it fair that we've intentionally set a company up like this where they actually can't continue on with their jobs to provide for their family because you're not in it? That's not fair to them. And so I believe that we have a personal responsibility as business owners to help our crews go to those levels of leadership. Because not only I think is that a good natural flow for helping grow people, but it also mitigates risk in case you have to step out for one reason or another. A lot of business owners carry a weight on their mind that they want to provide for the families of the people who are working for them. They want them to be able to do well and provide for their families, and they want this. And I know from personal experience, from conversations with different business owners, that is on their mind. Well, you've got to step out into this growth structure for your company in order to successfully do that. Otherwise, you're
Yeah.
constantly running a risk to yourself and to your employees. Um, if you're running that kind of I mean, I'm calling it a megamind structure, but
Yeah.
there's another term for it that would probably be better. Where you're the central nervous system of the whole thing. Um, so yeah, you've got you gotta run your weekly scorecard meetings. You gotta hit those daily production targets. You gotta help grow your people into those roles for the good of the company, for the good of their families and your family. If you want something that's going to be able to thrive, where um, if you're pulled out for one reason or another, that central nervous system is not residing only in one person. It's supported and shared by the network of leadership that you've been developing in your company. Um, so,
I think of Robert Kiyosaki. He talks about the cash flow quadrant and where you're at. You have left side of cash flow quadrant where you work as an employee, and then below that you have self-employed S, and then you have business and investor on the right hand side. And his point in that book is you want to be in the right hand side of the cash flow quadrant.
yeah,
And his definition of self-employed is you own the job. If you stop working, the income stops. The definition of business owner is you own a system, people work for you, and if you step away, it still generates income. Okay, so there's two lines and boundaries. If you think about your business today, the is it more of a self-employed business where if you stepped away today, would your crew stop working? Well, then you own a job. You don't actually own a business. You might own a LLC, business corporation, whatever, but that doesn't mean it's actually running as a business. So
yeah.
maybe breaking this down, you could start testing this, building systems into your business. Could you walk away for 2 weeks? Maybe not. Maybe that's not, you couldn't do that. Maybe the thing is you would need to increase the amount of jobs you're doing and then the people, and then start building out your leadership team a little bit. And then that would allow you to step away for a couple weeks. But I think the 2 week stepping away is a fantastic measurement for our niche, because that's super, super hard for business owners to do. And then from there, you could increase that and say, well, could I step away for a month? And then could I step away for a quarter? Right. And to be a true investor, maybe you just step in once a quarter in your business to do your check-in with your leadership team. But more than likely, you're going to have a lot larger business at that place. And more than likely, that's not necessarily all business leaders' goals. I mean, if you look at billionaires today, even who run their businesses, they haven't stepped away entirely from their business, right? That's not necessarily the goal. But it's just, can you step away and the business is still able to work, still able to make money? I think that's a very important measurement. Um, anyway, some good thoughts there, Neil. One of the things there, if you're the bottleneck and you're not scaling, then you're on survival mode and you just want to get yourself out of that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next problem that we see, though. Too many services, not enough focus. Why is that? Why do we do this as business owners?
It's easy to, use. Usually a business owner is someone who has taken some time to see opportunity and is willing to provide a solution for it. And so I think as business owners, we hone that awareness. And when you're starting out, not only do you hone that awareness, but you know, because you're trying to grow, the thought is, well, I'm just you don't have systems in place yet for marketing to consistently drive leads. And so, hey, I'm just going to take every opportunity that comes. And because I need the money. That there's a ceiling to that. There is a limit that if you function like that, you're going to hit over and over again. You can't do everything well. You can't do everything fantastic. You have too many variables spread thin when you're wide in your services. And so simplifying to core services allows you to really dig in and refine your marketing and your training and your fulfillment and your pricing. And so it's a mistake to do everything instead of really taking the time to master a few things or one thing. And so what in my experience, it's really, you have to get to the point where you're willing to pick 1 to 3 core services and become known for those. It'll feel odd. Some of you are already there. Some of you are looking down that road and thinking, "Hey, what should I do?" It's gonna feel a little unsteady. But once you dig into it, you put some time into it, you'll find that um, the idea that simplicity scales and chaos confuses is just very true, and it plays out. It's going to play out in your company. So it's important, and I think I'm trying to remember where I had mentioned this before, but for the good of your company as well, keeping to those core aspects and maintaining that idea of what you're really good at and what you're not good at is important, because if you want to consistently have a good customer experience, you have to guard against the other opportunities that are going to come, and they are going to come. You're going to have a customer who will say, "Hey, you're doing a fantastic job on this installation in my yard. I love it. I also need to do this. I'd love to just have you guys do it. You guys did such a good job here." And you'll be tempted to say, "Yeah, we can do that. We'll take care of that. The money is there. It's an upsell. Hey, we can figure this out and we can do it." And you may be able to figure it out and do it well. But at the best, it's going to slow. It typically slows everything else down. And you may be thinking, "Well, I'm making additional money on this job." Well, yeah, but you make better money doing your core services, and you could be spending that time on another job, making better money in the same amount of time, and just pushing forward in that. But instead, you're running a risk on, you're making less money and you're having to learn it. And then at the worst, you end up throwing in a poor customer experience because actually you're not that great at it. And they end up with a mediocre product or a bad product. Maybe they want you to do some cement work or something, and just whatever it may be. So just understand your products. And this kind of goes back to, make sure in your mindset that you're cultivating an attitude of assessment where, what do I gain if I do this? But what do I lose if I do this? And I'm talking about lost opportunity. Okay, you can do this additional thing that you don't normally do. It's really outside of the scope of your core. You can make some money on it. What are the risks? But actually, if you just say, hey, you know what? I know someone who's really good at this. We don't do that. How about if I can give you their card, and you bow out, and then your company moves on to another job where the same amount of time that you could have spent doing that off off core service item, you end up doing on core item, you in the same amount of time somewhere else, and your company just keeps on running its rhythms, putting out good work, and
Yeah.
making a good profit.
Yeah, I love that. The simplicity scales, chaos confuses. It's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. One of the things that kind of reminded me of is the idea of the Peter principle. In a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to the level of their incompetence. We do that in our business too, unknowingly, where we're actually saying yes to things we shouldn't be saying yes to. We're rising to the level of our incompetence. And what happens is people think, oh, it's such a great experience with you, so why don't you do this other thing? Well, you say yes, but
Mhm.
you just said yes to incompetence. And then that's where a bunch of problems can ensue from that. I mean, as a contractor on the job, you can just subcontract out to somebody who is competent, right? Like, for instance, in the concrete side of things, we'll sub out concrete work to an expert who can do that, because that's not one of our core competencies.
Yeah.
So, anyway, there was some good thoughts there. All right, so let's go to our last thing, which is no reporting or rhythms in the company. We kind of touched on this a little bit. No scorecards, no team KPIs. You're just kind of running blind. And I think, again, if you don't have this rhythm, the picture I think of in my mind is one brain working on the company. When you're a small fry guy, and you just work the company and it's you and maybe a helper, well, you didn't need to worry about there being multiple brains because it was just your brain. So it was no problem just having you were in the company, and that's it. Well, as you expand that into more brains, how do you get multiple people to think like one brain? Well, that's the number one thing you could do to fix your leadership is to just run basic scorecards, team meetings, get good at a meeting. Leadership doesn't have to be complex. Don't make it seem like you have to be, Steve Jobs over there or something. That's not leadership. Basic leadership is the ability to help other people be successful in your business, and you can help them be successful by facilitating. I think the word facilitate is such a better word for leadership, because you're facilitating and engaging and helping the people be successful around you. That's a better way to think about what leadership truly is within a company. As you make people successful around you, as you raise them up and make them even better at their job than you could ever be, they'll look at you and they'll work their butt off for you, because that's the type of leaders that people love in the business. And so if you don't have any reporting or rhythms in your company, if everything stops with you, then actually people start to feel gypped, as an employee. I don't know if you've ever worked for somebody like this, but somebody who just does everything themselves, they're the hero. They're constantly putting their employees down about how they can do the job better. Well, guess what? Do you really feel like working for that guy? No. I mean, that's not fun to work for. And usually I see, again, most dishonesty in those types of structures. Those are top-down leadership structures. And the people don't feel supported. They don't feel like there's a healthy mentorship happening within the business. And mentorship, again, it's not a scary word. It just means that you're helping people be better, helping them improve professionally. And by professional improvement, we would expect personal improvement should be a result of that too. They both go hand in hand. People say, hey, it's not personal. It's just business. That's a lie, man. That is totally a lie. Your professional development affects your personal, and your personal affects your professional, and it's all intermixed. And you, as a leader in managing people, have to help them and enable them. And so if you're running no reporting, no rhythms, no accountability in your business, you just short-circuited that huge opportunity to be able to really improve the people's lives in your business. So very important. And I mean, if again, if you don't, what does not get measured does not get done. I said that leadership without numbers, it just ends up being noise. Yeah, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I like the idea. If you're not leading with a weekly meeting rhythm, you're leading by fire drills. And
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think there's some mindset where we can choose to the reactive mindset can feel like it gives us more time. Because you're not taking the time to do the proactive things. And so if that's a struggle, I think that's one of those things where you have to look at yourself and analyze, do I have a problem with putting in the work? As men, we do hard things, and we can even fool ourselves into thinking that we're doing the hard things. Look at all this action I'm taking. Look at all this work that I'm doing on this job. Well, look in that mirror and look at the work that you're actually trying not to do, because that's probably what you need to be doing. And we can try to cover up that noise that's going on in the back of our mind by trying to take massive action in other areas. But that noise is still there. And in the back of your mind, okay, this is a problem. I have got to fix this. And so if we want to be men of action, men who take right action, we have to look at the work that we're trying not to do.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about in terms of how we run our company and how we manage ourselves and how we manage our processes and our rhythms.
Yeah, I think a lot of posturing, manly posturing, putting down other people, is to hide from the work that you're actually supposed to be doing. And I tend to see that men who look into the fray of the battle and they're ready to help the people around them and truly care and not just thinking about themselves and on some ego trip. It's they're looking into that thing that they know they need to solve in their life. That it's scary. I mean, it's like there's fear there, man. There should be fear.
Yeah.
It sucks to be incompetent in an area. and like, I tell you what, man, the 20%, the 80-20 rule, I think of that all the time. The 80% is the thing that you're stuck in today that really does nothing for you. The 20% is the thing that you should be focusing on that you actually know, that you're avoiding, right? That's what you're talking about. So if you can look into that 20%, what's also kind of funny is 80% of my resistance, I put like 80% of my effort into resistance into not doing the 20%, where if I can just wipe away that 80%, it actually only takes about 20% of the effort that I thought it would to actually do the thing. But I'm just like resistant, you know? So I think that's a really, really great point, Neil, you make. For all of us as men, we run into that, and it's important if we're posturing, saying things, putting people down, if our culture is falling apart, if people around us are lying, doing things that they shouldn't be doing in our business, man, we got to look at ourselves, man. Like, what thing have we not been solving that we've been avoiding maybe in our business? And let's figure out what that 20% is, and let's work on that to help our people. Where there's no vision, the people perish, is what the proverb says, right? So if you see your people perishing around you, guess what? Vision's off. we got to fix that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Whoop, we got some people
anyway.
perishing. I gotta fix that vision.
Yeah. I gotta fix
very,
that.
Very true.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's one of those things. You know, another thing that we'll see is, well, I'm too busy. I gotta do this work. I'm too busy to do that. And I think that's another thing, that another way that we can. This work is the long term for your business. It has to. Time has to be made for it.
Yeah.
If not, then you're taking on a whole lot of risk and sacrificing a future reality, because we have to make some hard decisions and maybe implement that training, or do those standard operating procedures, or pause and take care of stuff that is not comfortable, but that we have to grind down and hit the grind of learning and working in our company.
Yeah.
So thankfully there's people also that can help with that.
Oh yeah, always.
And there's business leaders, people that we can find that are willing to come alongside and help with teaching and getting these systems into place as well. So
you're the same people, except for the people you meet and the books you read. And if you need a book to read, you're not sure which one to read, you got to go meet somebody and ask them what books they read. Somebody who's at that next level.
Yep.
And that can solve a lot of problems. Well, hey, to wrap things up today, if any of these hit home for you guys, I mean, you're not alone. I mean, these are mistakes that Neil and I we've made every single one of these mistakes, not just once, multiple times, you know, so you're not alone. The thing is, they're not permanent. And I mean, there's still some of these mistakes that Neil and I are still working on today, in every single one of our businesses. And it's a joy to get past them. I think that's part of the joy of business, is just struggling through them. You know, that's fun, and we can do it together. But you can fix them wherever you're at today, whatever problem you're dealing with.
Yep.
Yeah, and once you do grow, it also gets fun again. You know, would you say, like, there's a period where you're feeling like, oh man, I hate my business. Actually, just keep on going. If you feel like you hate your business right now, just don't quit. It's about to actually get really good.
It gets fun again. You know,
yeah,
it actually, like you're dragging your business uphill, and you know, starts running smoother and less stressful, and you'll see it. There's gonna be light at the end of the tunnel. You implement these things, there's gonna be light at the end of the tunnel. It gets easier, it gets simpler, and you can get energized again, because you're gaining freedom back, and you're mitigating risks that actually in the back of your mind, they bother you, and they bother you a lot. And sometimes we just don't think about them, and we'll just work to so that we're not really thinking about those risks. But in the winter, when you're wondering what spring is going to be like and what leads are going to be like, those fears are all there. Well, let's get rid of those fears here together, guys, and let's push forward and turning grass into cash, dirt into dollars. Business can be fun for you and your family. You don't have to sacrifice family. Sure, it takes work, takes hard work, but it's worth it.
And if you want help, if you do want help building the systems too, just, there is helpful group that we have, Neil, what is that group?
Yes, guys, if you want help with your business, we'd love to talk. We've got a Millionaire Landscaper Facebook group. It's full of serious owners who want to win like you want to win, and that want to win the right way. So you're in good company. Guys that do good work, that are proactive thinking. They want to win, or they're in the middle of winning and they just want to win more, and they want to have this, this life balance and just do well in life. Come join us, and we'd love to talk. We'd love to see you in there.
Well, hey guys, it was great to connect today with you guys on this topic, and Neil and I are just excited to be able to talk about this kind of stuff with you, and looking forward to our next episode 3, which will be coming out next week. So we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.
All right.